Hello and welcome to this exploring session, as today we are going deep into the wounds of civil war by Thomas Lodge, which will complete our look at the works of, or at least the dramatic works of Thomas Lodge, as we have extant a play and a half, and we've already done the half. We did that earlier when we looked at Looking Glass of London and England, which parts of which we enjoyed very, very much. I cannot guarantee that anyone will be swallowed by a giant fish at any point during this recording, but these things are sent to try us. Instead, what we have is this Wounds of Civil War, lively set forth in the true tragedies of Marius and Sylla, as it have been publicly played in London by the Right Honourable the Lord High Admiral, his servants. So yes, Admiral's men, dated to around 1588. That's the general one, maybe the year earlier, depending on your point of view, as there are all sorts of chariot-based influences that may or may not intersect with this particular text. It's got a massive cast of characters, so we're going to be actually dancing not too much around today, but there is a little bit of dancing perhaps later in the week. Luckily we have a relatively full room this week, so hopefully that will go nicely. We have this wonderful team reading today. So reading today, who do we have? Reading Marius and a Slave is...
Hello, I'm Valentina and I am an Italian actor and voiceover artist in London.
Reading Granius and Favorinus, I think, is...
I'm Aliki Chapple. I'm an actor, translator and theatre maker based in the north of England.
Helen is reading Cinna and First Soldier is...
Thank you for reminding me. I'm Helen. Helen Good, and I'm a historian in Yorkshire.
Reading Merula and Lucius today is... Muted at present.
My name's Elizabeth Amisu. I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading Lectorius and Anthony today is...
My name is Alexandra, and I'm surrounded by some very unancient construction noise.
Reading Lucretius and Cethegus today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Sylla and young Marius today is...
I'm Lois, retired academic living in London, in an area with quite a lot of emergency vehicles. I think the sound of the sirens might be appropriate in this play.
Reading Pompey and Pausanius is...
Liza Graham, not much street noise at the moment in London.
And reading Sulpitius and Lepidus today is...
I am Steve Longstaffe, wondering whether there's going to be noise from the bird bath outside my window.
And I am your host, Robert Crighton. There may be dog barking in the background occasionally. I will endeavour to mute that if that occurs. I am very briefly going to be reading J. Brutus today. Yes, in the script we do have a couple of characters who are given initials in the first scene, and then it never happens again. So that we may need to decide whether they're different characters to other characters as they're labelled later on. I don't think they are, but who knows, they may be. One of the questions I have in my mind is very much the practical question of, with a cast of characters as large as this, is there a way of simplifying certain of these scenes, and how does the doubling work? Because how practically it is a play that looks quite vast on the page. How do we think about performing this today is the usual question. The script that everyone has does not have scenes listed. Scenes have been listed in other editions later on, and we're going to make some decisions as we go as to when scenes begin or end, because ultimately it's up to us. Don't care what the rest of the world thinks. So without further ado, we're going to start reading the play. We're going to start with Act 1, and we have a stage direction bringing lots and lots of people on stage. Enter on the Capitol Sulpitius, Tribune, Caius Marius, Q Pompey, Consul, Junius Brutus, Lucretius, Caius, Granius, Lectorius, Lucius, Merula, Jupiter's priest, and Cinna, whom placed, and their lictors before them with their rods and axes. All these people have come on in various ways, and Sulpitius beginneth.
Grave senators and fathers of this state, our strange protractions and unkind delays, where weighty wars doth call us out to fight, our factious wits to please aspiring lords, you see, have added power unto our foes, and hazarded rich Phrygia and Bithynia, with all our Asian holds and cities too. Thus Sylla, seeking to be general, who is invested in our consul's poll, hath forced murders in a quiet state, the cause whereof even Pompey may complain, who, seeking to advance a climbing friend, hath lost by death a sweet and courteous son, who now in Asia but Mithridates laughs at these fond dissensions I complain, while we, in wrangling for a general, forsake our friends, forestall our forward war, and leave our legions full of dalliance, waiting our idle wills at Capua. Fie, Romans! Shall the glories of your names, the wondrous beauty of this capital, perish through Sylla's insolence and pride, as if that Rome were robbed of true renown and destitute of warlike champions? Now, lo, hear the man, the rumour of whose fame hath made Iberia tremble and submit. See Marius, that in managing a state through many cares and troubles he has passed, and spent his youth, upon whose reverend head the milk-white pledge of wisdom sweetly spreads. He, 6 times consul, fit for peace or war, sits drooping here, content to brook disgrace, who, glad to fight through follies of his foes, sighs for your shame, whilst you abide secure. And I, that see and should recure these wrongs through Pompey's late vacation and delay, have left to publish him for general that merits better titles far than these. Nobles, now the final day is come, when I, your tribune studying for renown, pronounce and publish Marius general to lead our legions against Mithridates, and crave, grave fathers, signs of your contempt.
Believe me, noble Romans and grave senators, this strange election and this new-made law will witness our unstable government and dispossess Rome of her empery. For although Marius be renowned in arms, famous for prowess, and grave in warlike drifts, yet may the sunshine of his former deeds nothing eclipse our Sylla's dignity. By lot and by election he was made chief general against Mithridates, and shall we then abridge him of that rule? 'Twere injury to Sylla and to Rome. Nor would the height of his all-daring mind brook to the death so foul and vile disgrace.
Why, Pompey, as if the Senate had not power to appoint, dispose, and change their generals. Rome shall belike be bound to Sylla's rule, whose haughty pride and swelling thoughts puffed up foreshadows the reaching to proud Tarquin's state. Is not his lingering to our Roman loss at Capua, where he braves it out with feasts made known, think you, unto the Senate here? Yes, Pompey, yes, and hereof are we sure, if Roman state on Sylla's pride should lie, Rome's conquests would to Pontus' regions fly. Therefore, grave and renowned senators, pillars that bear and hold our rule aloft, you stately, true, and rich pyramids, descend into the depth of your estates. Then shall you find that Sylla is more fit to rule in Rome domestical affairs than have the conquest of Bithynia, which, if once got, he'll but by death forego. Therefore, I say, let Marius be our general.
So thus we strive abroad to win renown, and naught regard at home our waning states. Brutus, I say, the many brave exploits, the warlike acts that Sylla has achieved, show him a soldier and a Roman too, whose care is more for country than himself. Sylla, Nilbrook, that in so many wars, so hard adventures and so strange extremes, hath borne the palm and prize of victory, thus with dishonour to give up his charge. Sylla had friends and soldiers at command, that first will make the towers of Rome to shake, and force the stately capital to dance, ere any rob him of his just renown. Then we that through the Caspian Sea's shores have run, and spread with ships the Oriental Sea, at home shall make a murder of our friends, and massacre our dearest countrymen.
The power of Sylla naught will vail 'gainst Rome, and let me die, Lucretius, ere I see our senate dread for any private man. Therefore, renowned Sulpitius, send for Sylla back. Let Marius lead our men in Asia.
The law the Senate wholly doth affirm. Let Marius lead our men in Asia.
Sorry, never mind. Honor and victory follow Marius' steps.
We're waiting on Cinna, who had some muting issues.
Cinna has had more muting issues. Cinna affirms the Senate's censure just, and saith, let Marius lead the legions forth.
Honor and victory follow Marius' steps. For him doth Granius wish to fight for Rome.
Why then, you sage and ancient sires of Rome, Sulpitius here again doth publish forth that Marius by the Senate here is made chief general to lead the legions out against Mithridates and his competitors. Now, victory for honor of Rome. Follow Marius.
And here, and this is a stage direction I really like, here let Marius rouse himself.
Sage and imperial senators of Rome, not without good advisement have you seen old Marius silent during your discourse, yet not for that he feared to plead his cause or raise his honour trodden down by age, but that his words should not allure his friends to stand on stricter terms for his behoof. 6 times the Senate by election hath made Marius consul over warlike Rome, and in that space nor Rome nor all the world could ever say that Marius was untrue. These silver hairs that hang upon my face are witness of my unfeigned zeal. The Cimbrians that erewhile invaded France and held the Roman Empire in disdain lay all confounded under Marius' sword. Fierce Scipio, the mirror once of Rome, whose loss as yet my inward soul bewails, being asked who should succeed and bear his rule, even this, quoth he, shall Scipio's armour bear, and therewithal clapped me upon the back. If then, grave lords, my former past youth was spent in bringing honours unto Rome, let then my age and latter date of years be sealed up for honour unto Rome.
But here enter Sylla, and we're just going to pause there before we go forward. I think we should just anatomise some of the things that have been going on there. I've just been noting in my script, go Marius, go Sylla, and which way the room is going. It's just basic motivation things here. There's very much a... it's all very, very Marius centric. Some are obviously very on Sylla's side. Thoughts about that as a sort of opening scene? There seems to be the option of quite a lot of spectacle. People are not necessarily spectacle, but there's a lot of people coming on stage. They've got their devices of office. There's various ceremony potential things going on here, and then we get thrown into what on paper could be this is a relatively we like him, we don't like him kind of stuff. But this could have quite a lot of potential here in terms of how it actually comes out on stage. Alexandra.
Yeah, it doesn't feel, because it starts with a long speech, it could feel as though, oh, we're starting in a sort of sedate, one person proclaiming kind of situation. But the context is it's a big Senate debate. And I think there's a potential for it to be very dynamic and very energetic as a beginning, which is great. It really draws us in. And it gives us a lot of context through the debate.
Yes, and the thing is saying we can't do on Zoom, which is basically what we need is a lot of people going rah, rah no, yes, no, around the room. Elizabeth, did you wave or?
Oh, I was yawning, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Valentina.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's the potential for like almost audience participation or at least audience incitement.
Give them banners, give them, little placards and things. Get them to cheer on one side or the other. Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, were you waving?
No, I was not even yawning. Sorry.
It's a Monday. It's the first thing on a Monday. Well, I can't expect people to be really going for it yet. Other thoughts on the room about this opening? Who were we convinced by? Did you feel there was a case put forward, or was it just we prefer this person? Lois.
I'm not sure, but I get the impression that Sulpitius is trying to overturn something that's already been decided, and that's part of the problem, at least that people are pointing out, so that it's giving Sylla cause for being aggrieved.
Alan.
I must admit, I think the key point is the fact that the existing general has had 6 terms of office, which I think was exceptional in that period. I thought there was a 2-term rule.
Unheard of and outrageous.
Aliki.
I mean, this is a period when it's all starting to fall apart, all of that stuff, Alan.
Yeah.
And this is one of the symptoms. I quite like Marius's gambit here, and that makes me like him. Sort of, oh, I've just been sitting here quietly, but you know who I am, right?
Yeah, but how much because you get the impression he stage managed some of this. The fact that he's got people doing lengthy speeches on his behalf, but he's also just got a few people just going doing just a couple of lines here, one after the other as well. So you get this a sense of a momentum and chorus going on his side. And of course, as the next stage direction will read, here enter Sylla. Sylla's not in the room. This is all happening behind Sylla's back. Rude. So that which is the best way to organise these things is if it's easier to debate when it's a relatively one-sided affair. If you're on the one side. Any other thoughts before we continue with the scene? And say we paused mid-scene. No, okay, let's get a little more data on this room. I've still got a few lines left as Brutus. But anyway, here enter Sylla with captains and soldiers.
Sylla, what mean these arms and warlike troops, these glorious ensigns and these fierce alarms? 'Tis proudly done to brave the capital.
These arms, Sulpitius, are not born for hate, but maintenance of my confirmed state. I come to Rome with no seditious thoughts, except I find 2 froward injuries.
But wisdom would you did forbear to yield these slight suspicions of contempt, whereas the Senate studieth high affairs.
What serious matters have these lords in hand?
The senators with full decree appoint old Marius for their captain general to lead thy legions into Asia and fight against the fierce Mithridates.
To Marius? Jolly stuff. Why, then I see your lordships mean to make a babe of me.
Oh, 'tis true, Sylla. The Senate have agreed that Marius shall those bands and legions bear, which you now hold against Mithridates.
Marius should lead them then, if Sylla said not no. and I should be a consul's shadow then. Trustless senators and ungrateful Romans, for all the honors I have done to Rome, for all the spoils I brought within her walls, thereby for to enrich and raise her pride, repay you me with this ingratitude. You know, unkind, that Sylla's wounded helm was ne'er hung up once, or disdained with rust. The Martians that before me fell amain, and like to winter hail on every side, unto the city Nuba I pursued, and for your sakes were 30,000 slain. Hipponeans and the Samnites Sylla brought as tributaries unto famous Rome. Aye, where did Sylla ever draw his sword, or lift his warlike hand above his head for Roman's cause? But he was conqueror. And now, unthankful, seek you to disgrade and tear the plumes that Sylla's sword hath won? Marius, I tell thee, Sylla is the man disdains to stoop or veil his pride to thee. Marius, I say that thou mayst nor shalt not have the charge that unto Sylla doth belong, unless thy sword could tear it from my heart, which in 1,000 folds impales the same.
And Sylla, hereof be thou well full assured, the honour whereto mine undaunted mind and this grave senate hath enhanced me, thou nor thy followers shall derogate. The space of years that Marius hath o'erpassed in foreign broils and civil mutinies has taught him this, that one unbridled foe my former fortunes never shall o'ergo.
Marius, I smile at these thy foolish words, and credit me should laugh outright, I fear, if that I knew not how thy froward age doth make thy sense as feeble as thy joints.
Sylla, Sylla, Marius' years have taught him how to pluck so proud a younker's plumes, and now these airs that dangle down my face in brightness like the silver Rhodope shall add so haughty courage to my mind, and wrest such piercing objects thence thine eyes that masked in folly age shall force thee stoop.
And by my hand I swear, ere thou shalt maze me so, my soul shall perish, but I'll have thy beard. Say, grave senators, shall Sylla be your general?
No. The Senate, I, and Rome herself agrees, as none but Marius shall be general. Therefore, Sylla, these daring terms, unfit, beseem not thee before the Capitol.
Beseem not me. Senators, advise you. Sylla hath vowed, whose vows the heavens record, whose oaths have pierced and searched the deepest vast, aye, and whose protestations reign on earth. This Capitol, wherein your glories shine, was ne'er so pressed and thronged with scarlet gowns, as Rome shall be with heaps of slaughtered souls. Before that Sylla yield his titles up, I'll make her streets that peer into the clouds, burnished with gold and ivory pillars fair, shining with jasper, jet, and ebony, all like the palace of the morning sun, to swim within a sea of purple blood before I lose the name of general.
These threats against thy country and these laws, Sylla, proceed from forth a traitor's heart, whose head I trust to see advanced up on the highest top of all this capital, as erst was many of thy progeny before thou vaunt thy victories in Rome.
Greybeard, if so thy heart and tongue agree, draw forth thy legions and thy men-at-arms, rear up thy standard and thy steeled crest, and meet with Sylla in the fields of Mars, and try whose fortune makes him general.
I take thy word. Marius will meet thee there, and prove thee, Sylla, traitor unto Rome, and all that march under thy traitor's wings. Therefore, they that love the Senate and Marius, now follow him.
And all that love Sylla, come down to him. For the rest, let them follow Marius, and the devil himself be their captain.
And here let the Senate rise and cast away their gowns, having their swords by their sides. Exit Marius, and with him Sulpitius, Junius, Brutus, Lectorius, etc. And we're just going to pause there before we go into the final unit of action in this scene. That escalated quickly, didn't it? I mean, Sylla comes in and basically just they say, "Well, we've gone for the other guy," and he just goes, "You bastards! You ungrateful so-and-sos!" And it really escalates really quickly into a bit of a slanging match between him and Marius as well. I'm really taken by Marius constantly talking about the silver hair and the grey beard, and I'm thinking that, you know, good wig and beard work here. There's some interesting possibilities here that seems to be flagging up as an important signifier. Aliki, did you wave?
I was going to say that I think most Romans were clean shaven, so the beard would have been fairly unusual. Plus, it's a silver beard because he's older, significantly older than Sylla.
And you say it's not just the beard; it's the complete package. So you know I'm suggesting that that has import. Liza, then Lois.
Well, I'd like to say that we're thinking about Roman history, but that wasn't necessarily what the audience were seeing by the conventions of theater of this period. And we know from references to theater in texts funnier than this that actors normally that actors would wear beards and would change beards to alternate, and it's if most Romans were clean shaven, then most older Elizabethans or mature Elizabethan men of higher status would be wearing beards. And furthermore, on stage, you know, a beard seems a good signifier of Marius's age. One other thing I wanted to point out in conjunction with that is the reference to scarlet gowns, which may not go with the sort of I Claudius mental image of what we have of what a Senate scene would look like. But there was a saying that fools and authorities wore long gowns in the Elizabethan era, so that might be a hint as to costumes here, that the senators would be wearing long gowns with long sleeves, which of course they can then cast aside for that wonderful theatrical moment where they go from politicians to soldiers.
Yes, it's one hell of a moment in that stage direction. We'll come back to that stage direction in a moment. Lois, then Helen.
Yeah, I was going to make the point about scarlet gowns as well. I mean, they might have got aldermen's gowns, or I don't know, an awful lot of people wore scarlet gowns, but you had to be of a certain rank to do it. I think the costuming is basically Elizabethan with some sort of signifiers of Romanness draped over them, perhaps.
Laurel wreaths, maybe.
Yeah, bits and pieces. But yeah, I think the idea that it signifies rather than full costuming in that sense. Helen.
If you read the records of the City of London or other corporate boroughs for that matter, they are very conscious that their mayor is their consul of the year, and that there is the race of honor, the cursus honorum, which takes people from the lower ranks through, and they very much equate their aldermen with senators. And they make this conscious effort to say, look how tremendously civilized we are. And so it would not have seemed unusual to them for the Senate to have been dressed as aldermen in scarlet gowns, which were mandatory for aldermen. You could be fined for not wearing it.
So yeah, I mean the Sulpitius is like I put in the chat. You know, when he says no, you know, Sylla says, "Are you going to make me your general?" He just that no is huge. I thought Stephen actually the pause there, whether zoom created or intentional, really landed really very nicely, and I think that's a really nice pivot point. That's the point where you of crossing the Rubicon after that. The Senate's definitely said no. There's no persuading them, and Sylla just that's it. No, this is war. And then we get this moment, as stage direction's been noted, having their swords by their sides. They cast away their gowns and reveal that they're all armed. Everybody's tooled up for a fight. And especially, I think, in the current climate the last week, I think some people may be finding this quite triggering. And certainly the dramatic potential of this is really huge. We were talking about the potential of this looking like quite a dry thing at the beginning, and then saying, no, actually it's a lot more rowdy, and then we have this escalation, and this escalates very, very quickly. It's a very effective opening scene so far. Liza.
Milo has something to say.
Well, we do like to have a very mixed group of contributors to the discussion feed there. So I think that's what we all needed at that moment. Any additional thoughts before we finish the scene? Because one lot of faction have left, others remain. Alexandra.
I like your point about crossing the Rubicon, because this is very much a reflection of that from my perspective. You've got somebody who is a very powerful person in charge of armies being refused something and basically bringing their army into Rome, or in this case into the Senate, to say, yeah, I'm not gonna let you take that away from me. I wonder, as a historical point, how much this would be familiar to audiences of the time. So how little explanation this would need as to who is who and what this is about. And I also wonder, more importantly, in a contemporary production, how much clarification we might need, because it's a beautiful dynamic beginning, but what it lacks is introduction to most characters. So I wonder how much we would want people to understand from the beginning, because I feel like it might be that the only people you need to know about are Marius and Sylla, and everybody else is just there to fill the space. But of course, those people will come back and be relevant in the rest of the story. So yeah, that was just a point that I think will need considering in a modern production.
Yeah, I and it is a question as we go through it of the characters who do stay with us, and how we point the audience to them in different ways. In a sense, it's a very effective opening, because it sets out its stall very straightforwardly. There's him and there's him. One of them's old, one of them's younger. Fight, and actually background. I genuinely don't have that much idea of this area of Roman history, so I'm very much little bits leap out at me. So at the moment, I'm really not personally that fast, but let's see what the rest of the room felt. Aliki, then Stephen.
Okay, I have been very recently reading about this period of Roman history, so I can tell you that Marius and Sylla were ruling Rome together up until this point. So you could have a nice big banner that said Marius and Sylla, and then kind of slightly have it ripped apart, because this is the end of that alliance, the definitive end of what has been becoming an increasingly fractious alliance.
Stephen.
Yeah, about the 1590s, a lot of people think there were an awful lot of Civil War plays around, not just Roman ones. So in terms of the precise context, that's a different thing from people being able to go, oh, it's a Civil War play. And a lot of people link that to worries in the 90s and beyond about what was actually going to happen when the old Queen kicks the bucket. And there's nobody to adjudicate. So there is a kind of flash of Civil War interest, the late 80s and early 90s on the stage.
So if they don't know necessarily the precise plot, they know the shape, the general dramatic shape that this play may encompass. So there might be some comfort there for an audience. He said, comfort, is that the right word? Probably not. Elizabeth, did you wave that time?
Wave, yeah, I was really thinking about how you go about staging this, because I saw a dark play at the Barbican a few years ago, which was a history cycle, and they had a lot of like stuff with cameras. They had a lot of stuff with like cameras going off stage and then we watching it on stage. And I was thinking about like if it would be done in a forum and each of the politicians or the generals who are speaking would stand up, or would they be behind lecterns? I was just thinking about how that would be staged, especially if you have one of those auditoriums with the steps and the circular ones. And I was just thinking about how we would go about staging it, because every time someone speaks, it's really powerful and it's really impacting, and it has to have all the focus on them.
Yes, and those who, because some people are making set speeches and perhaps they do go to a destination, but some of the ones with just shorter lines, maybe they're more among a crowd of senators or something like that. And yeah, can we utilise the architecture of the theatre that we happen to be in as part of what is essentially a semi-theatrical space, which would be the Senate anyway? So yeah, I think we've got lots of options here. I think this opening scene is a really well structured piece of work for a theatre. I'm really liking it so far. Let's finish it. There's still a bit more to go. So remember the dramatic moment. They've all drawn their swords. One party, Marius's lot, a faction, have left, and now we are left with Sylla and various other people taking sides, shall we say? Starting with Pompey.
I'm sorry, I scrolled down to read ahead, which is bad. The Senate can vote to censure me if they so choose.
We may mute you later. Mute the microphone.
Okay, here we go. Sylla, I come to thee.
Sylla, Lucretius will die with thee.
Thanks, my noble lords of Rome.
Here, let them go down, and Sylla offers to go forth, and Antony calls him back.
Stay, Sylla. Hear Antony breathe forth the pleading plaints of sad declining Rome.
Antony, thou knowest thy honey words do pierce and move the mind of Sylla to remorse. Yet neither words nor pleadings now must serve, when as mine honour calls me forth to fight. Therefore, sweet Antony, be short for Sylla's haste.
For Sylla's haste. Oh, whither wilt thou fly? Tell me, my Sylla, what dost thou take in hand? What wars are these thou stirrest up in Rome? What fire is kindled by thy wrath? A fire that must be quenched by Romans' blood. A war that will confound our empery, and last, an act of foul impiety. Brute beasts nil break the mutual law of love, and birds' affection will not violate. The senseless trees have concord mongst themselves, and stones agree in links of amity. If they, my Sylla, brook not to have jars, what then are men, that gainst themselves do war? Thou'lt say, my Sylla, honour stirs thee up. Is't honour to infringe the laws of Rome? Thou'lt say, perhaps, the titles thou hast won, it were dishonour for thee to forego. Oh, is there any height above the highest, or any better than the best of all? Art thou not consul? Art thou not lord of Rome? What greater titles should our Sylla have? But wilt thou hence, thou'lt fight with Marius, the man the Senate, aye, and Rome hath chose. Think this, before thou never lift'st aloft, and lettest fall thy warlike hand adown. But thou dost raise and wound thy city, Rome. And look how many slaughtered souls lie slain under thy ensign and thy conquering lance, so many murders makest thou of thyself.
Enough, my Antony, for thy honeyed tongue, washed in a syrup of sweet conserves, driveth confused thoughts through Sylla's mind. Therefore suffice thee, I may nor will not hear. So farewell, Antony. Honour calls me hence. Sylla will fight for glory and for Rome.
And exit Sylla and his followers.
See, noble Antony, the trustless state of rule, the stainless hold of matchless sovereignty. Now fortune beareth Rome into the clouds, to throw her down into the lowest hells. For they that spread her glory through the world are they that tear her proud triumphant plumes. The heart-burning pride of proud Tarquinius, rooted from Rome, the sway of kingly mace, and now this discord, newly set abroach, shall raise our consuls and our senates down.
Unhappy Rome, and Romans thrice accursed, that oft with triumphs filled your city walls with kings and conquering rulers of the world, now to eclipse in top of all thy pride through civil discords and domestic broils. O Romans, weep the tears of sad lament, and rend your sacred robes at this exchange, for fortune makes our Rome a banding ball, tossed from her hands to take the greater fall.
Oh, whence proceed these foul, ambitious thoughts that fire men's hearts and make them thirst for rule? Hath sovereignty so much bewitched the minds of Romans that their former busied cares, which erst did tire in seeking cities good, must now be changed to ruin of her walls? Must they that reared her stately temples up deface the sacred places of their gods? Then maybe wail and wring our wretched hands, if both our gods, our temples, and our walls, ambition makes fell fortune's spiteful thralls.
And everybody exits. We've got a sort of whoa, slow down there moment from Anthony, and stop and think. And I just love Sylla's reply, which is, "Don't confuse me with logic."
Yeah.
I've had enough of experts telling me that things are too complicated. That they might be more complicated than a straightforward black and white. I should get the job. You shouldn't have the job proposition. This is feeling very, very, very doable today, I have to say. It's possibly, I say, just a little too doable today. But yeah, this is working for me. That's the end of scene one. Effectively, that is. We're just making a note there. Any thoughts from the room about Anthony's doomed attempt to try and persuade people not to fight? Alan?
I assume this isn't the same Anthony that we know from the Antony and Cleopatra and rivalry.
Yeah,
some years later.
We're assuming this is much earlier.
No, I think this must be the previous generation.
At least, I mean, it may be a grandfather or a father, but they named themselves. I mean, you get exactly the same names, generation after generation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is we should, yes, it's in Rome. Yes, we've got a lot of familiar names, but basically these are not the droids you're looking for. Is the important thing. Other thoughts about either that closing moment or the scene itself, Lois?
Yeah, I honestly couldn't figure out whether Sylla meant what he was saying to Anthony, you're so incredibly eloquent and soothing, that I better not listen to you, or whether he just meant shut up, you old fool, but I'm going to try to soften the blow, or I can't afford to have you against me too. I don't know.
I definitely read it as the second.
Yeah.
You talk so much. Shut up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the question with all of this is, of course, this is public speaking. How much of what people are saying at certain times is what they themselves are actually thinking or what they think people want to hear? We can say Anthony is probably being very sincere, but the person he's talking to at different times, Sylla is obviously very sincere when he's very cross, but at other times, and same with Marius. We were saying that he came across quite well, but is he? Is that just the public face that we've seen him with? How will he come across later? Other thoughts, Helen?
We're a few years short of the Essex Rebellion, but he was a general in Ireland deprived of his command, and more importantly, the revenue from the monopoly of sweet wines. But nevertheless, what you've got here is the mindset. This is the sort of history that people were reading, that people of that type were reading.
Okay, anything else before we, Alexandra?
I really love the structure of the scene, right? We start in medias res. We start during the debate. We understand who is on what side. The debate gets worse. Then the people actually, one of them is already there. He intervenes. Another one turns up with an army. Things are getting worse. Things are getting worse. And you get this moment of they almost fight and then they don't, which is a brilliant way to begin, because now we've established a connection, like an emotional connection as viewers to those characters, and we've also got this I don't know what to call it, of the almost that then doesn't happen, which is the thing that we will from now on be expecting. And I also think that it's possible to play with this speech of Antony's. It was kind of surprising to me, as it was developing. But I think it's possible to play with it as a hold on a second. You're not in the right, in a public sphere kind of way, as opposed to necessarily it meaning what the words are saying, which is, oh, but why why have people fight against people? It's so unnatural. There is an element to it that is, hang on a second, you might be right about wanting your generalship or your power back, but if you start a civil war from the public point of view, you will be in the wrong. Which might be why Sylla goes, stop it. I'm just going to go out there and do some killing.
Yes, and to be fair, and Anthony, in that, I liked the way you're thinking about, why Anthony presents his oration there in the way he does, because he does talk some awful tosh in the midst of making a perfectly reasonable point. So that's quite interesting. This is a wonderful mix. We've got one short scene to conclude this act. It's very exciting because we've had all this delayed gratification, and now we get a bit of gratification. We get a bit of excitement. We can almost say that this is a scenette in its own right. This stage direction. There's a great alarum. Let young Marius, who we haven't met yet, I don't think, he may have been in the room, chase Pompey over the stage, and old Marius chase Lucretius. Then, and this is where we go into scene action itself, then let enter 3 or 4 soldiers and his ancient with his colours, and Sylla after them with his hat in his hand, and they offer to fly away. Sylla.
Oh, sorry. Yes, for some reason this all disappeared. Right. Why, whither fly ye, Romans? What mischief makes this flight? Stay, good my friends, stay, dearest countrymen.
Stay, let us hear what our Lord Sylla saith.
What, will you leave your chieftains, Romans, then, and lose your honors in the gates of Rome? What, shall our country see, and Sylla rue those coward thoughts so fixed and firmed in you? What, are you come from Capua to proclaim your heartless treasons in this happy town? What, will you stand and gaze with shameless looks whilst Marius' butchering knife assails our throats? Are you the men, the hopes, the stays of state? Are you the soldiers pressed for Asia? Are you the wondered legions of the world? And will ye fly these shadows of resist? Well, Romans, I will perish through your pride that thought by you to have returned in pomp, and at the least your general shall prove, even in his death, your treasons and his love. Lo, this the wreath that shall my body bind while Sylla sleeps with honor in the field, and I alone within these colors shut will blush your dastard follies in my death. So farewell, heartless soldiers and untrue, that leave your Sylla, who hath loved you.
And exit Sylla.
Why, fellow soldiers, shall we fly the field and carelessly forsake our general? What, shall our vows conclude with no avail? First die, sweet friends, and shed your purple blood before you lose the man that wills you good. Then to it, brave Italians, out of hand. Sylla, we come with fierce and deadly blows to venge thy wrongs and vanquish all thy foes.
And they exeunt to the alarum. We have a bit of burst of action. Looks like Sylla's losing. Sylla's running on, trying to rally his men. How does he do it? He guilt trips them a bit. It's one hell of a guilt trip. This is fascinating psychology. That's a wonderful speech.
This is all your fault. Yes. Yeah.
You heartless. Again, it's the same thing you did earlier, just going, you bastards. Or in this case, dastards. Yeah.
Nobody appreciates me.
No.
Yes.
And it works. It works. Any thoughts in the room from that one? I kind of don't want to hang up the action too much because Sylla's about to we get a conclusion of this action in a moment. So, thoughts? No, we've kind of got. I'm really enjoying this. I'm just going to keep putting that out there. Okay, keeping the action moving forward. Act 2, Scene 1. Sylla having rallied his armies, and the first soldier gives a wonderful little speechette there, actually. I have to say, it's a great little one. It's very rousing. Exit to the alarum, and so we now go straight into a scene where enter Sylla triumphant. Lucretius, Pompey with soldiers.
You Roman soldiers, fellow mates in arms, the blindfold mistress of uncertain chance hath turned these traitorous climbers from the top and seated Sylla in the chiefest place, the place beseeming Sylla and his mind. For were the throne where matchless glory sits, impaled with furies, threatening blood and death, begirt with famine and those fatal fears that dwell below amidst the dreadful vast, Sylla's sparkling eyes should dim with clear the burning brands of their consuming light, and master fancy with a forward mind, and mask repining fear with awful power. For men of baser metal and conceit cannot conceive the beauty of my thought. I, crowned with a wreath of warlike state, imagine thoughts more greater than a crown, and yet befitting well a Roman mind. Then, gentle ministers of all my hopes, that with your swords made way unto my wish, hearken the fruits of your courageous fight. In spite of all these Roman basilisks that seek to quell us with their currish looks, we will to Pontus. We'll have gold, my hearts. Those oriental pearls shall deck our brows, and you, my gentle friends, you Roman peers, kind Pompey, worthy of a consul's name, you shall abide the father of the state, whilst these brave lads, Lucretius and I, in spite of all these brawling senators, will, shall, and dare attempt on Asia, and drive Mithridates from out his doors.
Aye, Sylla, these are words of mickle worth, fit for the master of so great a mind. Now Rome must stoop, for Marius and his friends have left their arms, and trust unto their heels.
But, Pompey, if our Spanish genets' feet have learned to post it of their mother wind, I hope to trip upon the greybeard's heels till I have cropped his shoulders from his head. And for his son, the proud aspiring boy, his beardless face and wanton smiling brows shall, if I catch him, deck yon Capitol. The father, son, the friends and soldiers all that frown on Marius shall with fury fall.
And what event shall all these troubles bring?
This. Sylla in fortune will exceed a king. But, friends and soldiers, with dispersed bands go seek out Marius' fond confederates, Some post along those unfrequented paths that track by nooks unto the neighboring sea. Murder me, Marius, and maintain my life, and that his favorites in Rome may learn the difference betwixt my fawn and frown, go cut them short, and shed their hateful blood, to quench these furies of my froward mood.
And exit some soldiers. I think we'll just briefly pause there, just for a pickup. It's been noted. I think Aliki noted that in the chat. There's aren't I great moments there. Men of base and metal and conceit cannot conceive the beauty of my thought.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's won. Or is certainly in the ascendant there. Thoughts from the room about this little moment? We're still mid-scene. Elizabeth.
I thought that Sylla's speech was really beautiful, especially the first one. There's a line that Sylla says about the blindfold mistress of uncertain chance. I just thought it had such a good ring to it. Sylla was really coming across as this great orator.
I mean, the thing is, actually, all of these speeches are doing wonderful work, and but it is also still conveying character of being a doubtful character, shall we say? Helen.
Yes, a doubtful character, I think, is generous. I was about to say moral vacuum.
Again, saying that this has any resonance with today, it's just coincidence. Valentina.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would call him a great orator. The speech is beautiful, but you're not meant to say that stuff out loud.
Especially not in Rome.
Especially not in Rome, where, diplomacy is an art. But fine.
Not just diplomacy, but to raise yourself above other citizens was contrary to the ethos of the Roman Republic.
Yeah. But what I wanted to say actually was it's incredibly fast-paced. Because he's saying that, and like 20 lines before, you just run the risk of being deserted. It's like, it goes so fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This play isn't hanging around. It's doing a lot of work. Alan.
I think actually, while accepting the point that you don't speak like this when you're talking with maybe your equals within the Senate, I think this whole sequence is basically him giving a pep talk to his mob of soldiers, and therefore actually probably does work. It's rabble rousing. It's come on, everybody, let's march on the capital.
I mean, I mean, to a degree, yes. But then again, it's also a question of what the discourse, what the kind of things you're supposed to say in front of troops as well is not necessarily what he's saying. I mean, it does feel like the kind of leader who just sits there spouting monologues and everyone else is sitting there making notes, trying to figure out a way to please them, which fits quite a few people. Alexandra.
I wonder whether there are potentially several layers of audibility that you would play with, so that there are things shouted to all the soldiers down there in the groundlings, and then there are things that I'm saying to the people who asked that question. Of course I'm going to be a king. Let's go and free the Republic! That sort of thing. I think there's room to play with a lot of that in these big speeches that would also make them interesting and dynamic, because there are some things, as Valentina pointed out, that you wouldn't say that in public, but there are also some very clear indications of let's go in different directions. So there's let's go to Pontus and get stuff. But there's also, let's go kill people. Let's go murder, or go you and murder these people for me. So, whereas in one respect that might feel internally conflicting, it might also be orders to different segments of his sort of attention circle.
Yes, and also, what kind of things that what kind of placement these soldiers are in. Have we gone from a big battle in the outskirts somewhere? Are we now in a much more going through the streets kind of situation here? I mean, how you stage this or how you portray where they are in relation to where they were, the various locations that we are travelling through as well slightly changes how the scenes function. I think the idea of which voice and who you're talking to is very important. That last speech by Sylla is who is that being addressed to? And there's lots of, that feels a slightly smaller group of people than some of the earlier stuff. And that's one to really play around with in rehearsal. I saw hands from Liza and then Lois, I think.
Really just that Pontus seems like more of a policy statement, that Sylla's policy is to go to Pontus and sack it. But then, as Alexandra said, the more immediate stuff of fighting Marius and his clan and committing murder and skullduggery may then take the form of speeches to trusted sections of the army or individuals.
Yes, Lois.
Yeah, I think that's right. The whole thing is so sort of ironic. I don't know how far the humor of it would come across to people, but just the contrast between the way Sylla addresses the troops when he's losing and then the way he addresses them when they've won. And also just the whole situation. I mean, at the beginning, the idea was that the army was going to go against Pontus, and they've just had a war to decide who gets to lead the army to Pontus. And so it's kind of a war to decide who goes to make war. I mean, it's pretty absurd, really.
Alexandra, then we'll move on.
A really quick point to add to Lois is I think it's really important who is around Sylla in both of these scenes and what their reactions are, because without adding anything in the way of text, the way in which the text is reacted to would give us a lot more of that. Of this kind of context. So if you've got people going, yeah, oh, wait a second, what? Or if you've got the same, if people have listened to both of those speeches, if the same people have listened to both of those speeches, surely they'd pick up on something. If they are different people so if he's talking in two different contexts, I don't know how we'd show that. How that would build for us for an audience on stage, if that makes sense, how that would build the narrative. Whereas if they are the same people, then there should be a difference in reactions.
Right, we're going to move forward. We're going to finish this scene. It's a reasonably lengthy chunk of stuff, which I think we should let flow into itself. Less stoppy-starty now as we get to the end of the session. So the soldiers have all exited, but we have approaching Sylla and his named characters. Various senators are going to be approaching in a moment.
Lo, Sylla, where our senators approach. Perhaps to gratulate thy good success.
Enter Anthony, Granius, and Lepidus.
Aye, that perhaps was fitly placed there. But, my Lucretius, these are cunning lords, whose tongues are tipped with honey to deceive. As for their hearts, if outward eyes may see them, the devil scarce with mischief might agree them.
Good fortune to our consul, worthy Sylla.
And why not general against the king of Pontus?
And
General against the king of Pontus.
Sirrah, your words are good, your thoughts are ill. Each milk-white hair amid this mincing beard, compared with millions of thy treacherous thoughts, would change their hue through vigor of thy hate. But did not pity make my fury thrall, this sword should finish hate, thy life, and all. I prithee, Granius, how doth Marius?
As he that bides a thrall to thee and fate, living in hope, as I and others do, to catch good fortune, and to cross thee too.
Both blunt and bold, but too much mother wit, to play with fire where fury streams about. Curtail your tale, fond man, cut off the rest. But here I will dissemble for the best.
Sylla, my years have taught me to discern betwixt ambitious pride and princely zeal. And from thy youth, these peers of home have marked a rash, revenging humor in thy brain, thy tongue adorned with flowing eloquence, and yet I see imprinted in thy brows a fortunate but froward governance. And though thy rival Marius, mated late by backward working of his wretched fate, is fallen, yet, Sylla, mark what I have seen, even here in Rome. The fencer Spectacus hath been as fortunate as thou thyself, but when that Crassus' sword assayed his crest, the fear of death did make him droop for woe.
You saw in Rome this brawling fencer die when Spectacus by Crassus was subdued. Why so? But, sir, I hope you will apply and say that, like Spectacus, I shall die. Thus peevish eld, discoursing by a fire, amidst their cups, will prate how men aspire. Is this the greeting, Romans, that you give unto the patron of your monarchy? Lucretius, shall I play a pretty jest?
What Sylla will, what Roman dare withstand?
A brief and pleasing answer, by my head. Why, tell me, Granius, dost thou talk in sport?
No, Sylla, my discourse is resolute, not coined to please thy fond and cursed thoughts. For were my tongue betrayed with pleasing words to feed the humours of thy haughty mind, I rather wish the rot should root it out.
The bravest brawler that I ever heard. But, soldiers, since I see he is oppressed with crooked collar, and our artists teach that fretting blood will press through opened veins, let him that has the keenest sword arrest the grey beard and cut off his head in jest. Soldiers, lay hands on Granius.
Is this the guerdon then of good advice?
No, but the means to make fond men more wise. Tut, I have wit, and carry warlike tools to charm the scolding prate of wanton fools. Tell me of fencers and a tale of fate? No, Sylla thinks of nothing but a state.
Why, Sylla, I am armed the worst to try.
I pray thee then, Lucretius, let him die.
And exeunt, I'm assuming, Lucretius with Granius.
Beshrew me, lords, but in this jolly vein 'twere pity but the prating fool were slain. I fear me Pluto will be wroth with me for to detain so grave a man as he.
But seek not, Sylla, in this quiet state to work revenge upon an aged man, a senator, a sovereign of this town.
The more the cedar climbs, the sooner down. And did I think the proudest man in Rome would wince at that which I have wrought or done, I would and can control his insolence. Why, senators, is this the true reward wherewith you answer princes for their pain, as when this sword hath made our city free, a braving mate should thus distemper me? But, Lepidus and fellow senators, I am resolved and will not brook your taunts. Who wrongeth Sylla, let him look for stripes.
Ay, but the milder passions show the man. For as the leaf doth beautify the tree, the pleasant flowers bedeck the painted spring, even so, in men of greatest reach and power, a mild and piteous thought augments renown. Old Antony did never see, my lord, a swelling shower that did continue long, a climbing tower that did not taste the wind, a wrathful man not wasted with repent. I speak of love, my Sylla, and of joy, to see how fortune lends a pleasant gale unto the spreading sails of thy desires, and loving thee, must counsel thee withal, for as by cutting fruitful vines increase, so faithful counsels work a prince's peace.
Now, honey-talking father, speak thy mind.
My Sylla, Scarce those tears are dried up that Roman matrons wept to see this war. Along the holy streets the hideous groans of murdered men infect the weeping air. Thy foes are fled, not overtaken yet, and doubtful is the hazard of this war. Yea, doubtful is the hazard of this war, for now our legions draw their wasteful swords to murder whom? Even Roman citizens. To conquer whom? Even Roman citizens. Then if that Sulla loved these citizens, if care of Rome, if threat of foreign foes, if fruitful counsels of thy forward friends may take effect, go fortunate and drive the king of Pontus out of Asia, lest while we dream on civil mutinies, our wary foes assail our city walls.
My long concealed thoughts, Mark Antony, must seek discovery through thy pliant words. Believe me, Sylla, civil mutinies must not obscure thy glories and our names. Then, sith that factious Marius is suppressed, go spread thy colours midst the Asian fields. Meanwhile, myself will watch this city's weal.
Pompey, I know thy love, I mark thy words. And Anthony, thou hast a pleasing vein. But senators, I harbour in my head with every thought of honour some revenge.
Enter Lucretius with the head.
Speak, what, shall Sylla be your general?
We do decree that Sylla shall be general.
And wish you Sylla's weal and honour too?
We wish both Sylla's weal and honour too.
Then take away the scandal of this state, banish the name of tribune out of town, proclaim false Marius and his other friends foemen and traitors to the state of Rome. And I will wend and work so much by force as I will master false Mithridates.
The name of tribune hath continued long.
So shall not Lepidus, if he withstand me. Sirrah, you see the head of Granius. Watch you his hap, unless you change your words. Pompey, now please me. Pompey, grant my suit.
Lictors, proclaim this our undaunted doom. We will that Marius and his wretched sons, his friends Sulpitius, Claudius, and the rest, be held for traitors, and acquit the men that shall endanger their unlucky lives, and henceforth tribune's name and state shall cease. Grave senators, how like you this decree?
Even as our consuls wish, so let it be.
Then, Lepidus, all friends in faith for me, so leave I Rome to Pompey and my friends, resolved to manage those our Asian wars. Frolic, brave soldiers, we must foot it now. Lucretius, you shall bide the brunt with me. Pompey, farewell, and farewell, Lepidus. Mark Antony, I leave thee to thy books. Study for Rome and Sylla's royalty. But by my sword, I wrong this greybeard's head. Go, Sirrah, place it on the Capitol. A just promotion fit for Sylla's foe. Lordings, farewell. Come, soldiers, let us go.
Sylla exits as they're exiting.
Sylla, farewell, and happy be thy chance, whose war both Rome and Romans must advance.
Exeunt senators end scene. So that went well for Granius there. Used as a political prop to basically say, "Hi, this is what power looks like. It's a head in a bag." You know, it's yeah. Yeah, that's quite a scene. That's quite a scene.
Yeah. I mean, we go very quickly in the course of one act. Is it one act? 1.5? From not knowing.
We're into Act 2 technically, but the way the facts flow is
So
debatable.
at the beginning of the play, we didn't really know who these people are. By the end of it, we have a very clear. By this point, we have a very clear idea who Sylla is.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's these reasonable people who a mixture of people who the people who are against him, the people who are sort of sitting on the fence, and how do you turn people's opinions in your favour? You utilise the people who are definitely against you. This is very effective. I mean, I'm just saying. And again, there's still some really nice speeches going on. There's nice dialogue. There's some really nice, very short, just statements of just going, I mean, I think Sylla's line, "Speak, what shall Sylla be your general?" It doesn't look like much of a line, but literally as the head comes on. And it's just very, very, so, what do you think, people? Juxtaposition of image with actually a very simple line of dialogue, and then everybody, the speed of which Lepidus and Anthony respond. How long is that pause? What does the room do there? Thoughts, Alexandra?
And also the fact that they repeat his exact words. So it's this amazing sort of, head goes on the table. So are you giving me what I want? We are giving you exactly what you want. It's a very beautiful, from a writing perspective, it's a very beautiful way of signposting that without putting it in a lot more words. It's great.
Mm. And then the very casual thing of, I wrong this greybeard's head, go Sylla, place it on the capital. So it sounds like it's a reasonable statement. I've wronged this person who I've killed. Place it nice and publicly, so that, and obviously for the time this was produced, placing heads in public places was a very done political statement. So, this play makes that point nicely as well. Other thoughts before we got 2 more scenes to do this session? Stephen?
Just back to beards. If severed head props, it helps if somebody's referred to as greybeard, because you're going to dress the prop with a grey beard.
Mm. Yeah, that
or indeed the actor.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah, to fit the prop. If let's say in stock at the Admiral's Men, we know they've got a grey-headed severed head. Are there other plays where this is appropriate? Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah. The other thing about severed heads is that they were on London Bridge, weren't they? So if you're going across the Thames using the bridge, then you see this stuff every day.
Mm. Yes. Other thoughts? No. Okay. Let's go on to the next scene. Hopefully, it will be more cheerful. Hopefully, there'll be some laughs. Maybe not. I don't think we've got there yet. There is some comedy later, I believe. Or at least there claims to be. So, Act 2, Scene 2, as we're calling it, enter the magistrates of Minturnum with Marius, very melancholy, Lucius, Favorinus, and Pausanius with some attendants. So, some people we've not met before, some people who we have.
My lord, the course of your unstayed fate, made weak through that your late unhappy fight, withdraws our wills that fain would work your weal. For long experience and the change of times, the innocent suppressions of the just, in leaning to forsaken men's relief, doth make us fear, lest our unhappy town should perish through the angry Roman sword.
Lords of Minturnum, when I shaped my course to fly the danger of pursuing death, I left my friends, and all alone attained in hope of succour to this little town, relying on your courtesies and truth. What foolish fear doth then amaze you thus?
Marius, thou thyself, thy son, thy friends are banished and exiles out of Rome, proclaimed for traitors, reft of your estates, adjudged to death with certain warranties. Should then so small a town, my lord, as this hazard their fortunes to supply your wants.
Why, citizens, and what is Marius? I tell you, not so base as to despair, yea, able to withstand ingratitudes. Tell me of foolish laws decreed at Rome to please the angry humours of my foe. Believe me, lords, I know I am assured that magnanimity can never fear, and fortitude so conquer silly fate, as Sylla, when he hopes to have my head, may hap ere long on sudden lose his own.
A hope beseeming Marius, but I fear too strange to have a short and good effect.
Why, Sir Pausanius, have you not beheld Campania plains fulfilled with greater foes than is that wanton milksop, nature's scorn? Base-minded men to live in perfect hope, whose thoughts are shut within your cottage eaves, refuse not Marius, that must favour you. For these are parts of unadvised men, with present fear to lose a perfect friend that can, will, may control, command, subdue that braving boy that thus bewitched you.
How gladly would we succour you, my lord, but that we fear.
What? The moonshine in the water? Thou wretched stepdame of my fickle state, are these the gardens of the greatest minds? To make them hope and yet betray their hap? To make them climb, to overthrow them straight? I curse thy wrack, thy wrath, thy bale, thy wheel, that makes me sigh with the sorrow that I feel. Untrodden paths my feet shall rather trace than wrest my succours from inconstant hands. Rebounding rocks shall rather wring my truth than these Campanian piles, where terrors bide, and nature that hath lifted my throne so high shall witness Marius' triumph if he die. But she that gave the lictor's rod and axe to wait my 6 times consulship in Rome will not pursue where erst she fluttered so. Minturnum then, farewell, for I must go, but think for to repent you, or you know.
Nay, stay, my lord, and deign in private here to wait a message of more better worth. Your age and travels must have some relief, and be not wroth, for greater men than we have feared Rome and Roman tyranny.
You took it now like men confirmed in faith. Well, let me try the fruits of your discourse, for care my mind and pain my body wrongs.
Then Favorinus shut his lordship up within some secret chamber in the state. Meanwhile, we will consult to keep him safe and work some secret means for his supply.
Be trusty, lords. If not, I can but die.
And excerpt Marius.
Poor hapless Roman, little wottest thou the weary end of thine oppressed life.
Why, my Pausanius, what imports these words?
O Lucius, age hath printed in my thoughts a memory of many troubles past. These greatest towns and lords of Asia have stood on tickle terms through simple truth. The Rhodian records well can witness this. Then, to prevent our means of overthrow, find out some stranger that may suddenly enter the chamber whereas Marius lies, and cut him short. The present of whose head shall make the Romans praise us for our truth, and Sylla pressed to grant us privilege.
Barbarous acts to wrong the men that trust.
In country's cause injustice proveth just. Come, Lucius, let not silly thought of right subject our city to the Romans' might. For why you know in Marius only end Rome will reward and Sylla will befriend.
Yet all successions will us discommend.
And they exit. So, yeah, having agreed tentatively to take in Marius, yeah, maybe we'll just deliver him to the Romans there. Yeah, this is not looking good. Not looking good for Marius there. Yeah, feeling like an episode of Secret Army at the moment. So, any thoughts about this particular scene? I've got a couple of things I want to throw in, but I'll see what the room says. Lois first.
Well, it's quite subtle, really, the way that they're trying to be nice to him at the beginning, but it's obvious, as he can see perfectly well, that they don't want him there and would like to send him on somewhere else.
Yes, it's an awkward conversation, isn't it? You know, we're nothing against you, but you know, you got some big enemies out there. Aliki.
And it's interesting to see whether Pausanius has decided when Marius arrives that he's going to give Sylla his head, or if he decides during this scene, and that's
Helen muted at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way Pausanius and Lucius put forward the two different views. Pausanius is saying it is for the advantage of our town that Sulla and Rome are powerful. We will gain great advantage by killing their enemies. And Lucius is saying, sure, but we will be known throughout history then as rotters.
Yes, because you've taken them in, and that's a big thing about hospitality: is you don't kill people you've taken in. You can leave them on the street, but if you take them in, you don't let them be murdered or murder them yourself. Valentina.
I think it's interesting to see the two different approaches to asking for help between Cinna or Sylla, what was his name, and Marius, because one goes for I'm weak, you need to help me, kind of like guilt tripping. The other one goes like, no, I'm still strong. Just nice, different ways of going about it.
Yeah, just a textual question. I'm just going to ask the room as well. I'm assuming that actually we had two different speakers reading Favorinus and Lucius. I'm wondering if they're in fact the same person. That's just in private when they're among friends. He calls him Lucius. It's slightly unclear. That's one for me to check, but I'm just throwing that out there. As partly for anyone watching who may have a more accurate script and going, hang on, why is somebody else talking? Any brief thoughts on that or anything else on this scene?
Favorinus is also Lucius, as well as Merula. So I think it would be useful to use their surnames or their second names rather than the first ones.
Yeah, it is that thing of when you've got various different names for the same people, potentially. It's there's various trixinesses that we might want to tidy up for the next time we come to it. Aliki.
Oh, I was going to say, the Romans don't seem to have had a lot of male first names. Almost everybody is Marcus, Lucius, or Gaius. So,
well, it's that thing of when cultures give you so many different names that you might use in different contexts. Do you simplify that for an audience, or do you embrace it and go for it? I think within the scene, if it is the same person, then it makes sense that privately he uses a different name, as opposed to the public name he might use for when you've got the guest in. That sort of makes sense, if that is in fact accurate. Anyway, we've got one more scene to do before we finish. So let us indeed do it. This is Act 2, Scene 3, probably, and we are going to a different Marius. We're going to enter Marius the Younger, Cethegus and Lectorius with Roman lords and soldiers.
The wayward lady of this wicked world that leads in luckless triumph wretched men, my Roman friends, hath forced our desires and framed our minds to brook too base relief. What land or Libyan desert is unsought to find my father Marius and your friend? Yea, they whom true relent could never touch, these fierce Numidians, hearing our mishaps, weep floods of moan to wail our wretched fates. Thus we, that erst were terrors, did attain Bactrian bounds, and in our Roman wars enforced the barbarous borderers of the Alps to tremble with the terrors of our looks, now fly, poor men, affrighted without harms, seeking amidst the desert rocks and dens for him that whilom in our capital, even with a beck, commanded Asia. Thou, woeful son of such a famous man, unsheathe thy sword, conduct these warlike men to Rome, unhappy mistress of our harms, and there, since tyrant's power hath thee oppressed, and robbed thee of thy father, friends, and all, so die undaunted, killing of thy foes that were the offspring of these wretched woes.
Why, how now, Marius, will you mate us thus, that with content adventure for your love? Why, noble youth, resolve yourself on this, that son and father both have friends in Rome that seek old Marius's rest and your relief.
Lectorius, friends are decent nowadays, and grow to fume before they taste the fire. Adversities bereaving man's avails, they fly like feathers dallying in the wind. They rise like bubbles in a stormy rain, swelling in words and flying faith and deeds.
How fortunate art thou, my lovely lord, that in thy youth mayst reap the fruits of age, and having lost occasions hold fast now, may learn hereafter how to entertain her well. But sudden hopes do swarm about my heart. Be merry, Romans. See, where from the coast a weary messenger doth post him fast.
And indeed here enter Cinna's slave with a letter enclosed, posting in haste.
It should be Cinna's slave, or else I err, for in his forehead I behold the scar wherewith he marketh still his barbarous swains.
Oh, stay him, good Lectorius, for meseems his great post-haste some pleasure should present.
Sylla, art thou of Rome?
Perhaps, sir. No?
Without perhaps, say, Sylla, is it so?
This is Lectorius, Marius' friend, I trow. Yet were I best to learn this certainty, lest some dissembling foes should me descry.
Sylla, leave off this foolish dalliance, lest with my sword I wake you from your trance.
Oh, happy men! Oh, labours well achieved! How has this chance my weary limbs revived? Oh, noble Marius! Oh, princely Marius!
What means this peasant by his great rejoice?
Oh, worthy Roman, many months have passed since Cinna, now the consul and my lord, has sent me forth to seek thy friends and thee. All Libya with our Roman presidents, Numidia full of unfrequented ways, these weary limbs have trod to seek you out, and now, occasion pitying of my pains, I late arrived upon thy wished shores, found out a sailor born in Capua that told me how your lordship passed this way.
Ah, a happy labour, worthy some reward. How fares thy master? What's the news at Rome?
Pull out the pike from off the javelin top, and there are tidings for these lords and thee.
Ah, a policy beseeming Cinna well. Lectorius, read and break these letters up.
To his honourable friend Marius the Younger, greeting. Being consul for the welfare of both father and son with other thy accomplices, I have, under an honest policy, since my instalment in the consulship, caused all Sylla's friends that were indifferent with the other neighbouring cities to revolt. Octavius, my fellow consul, with the rest of the Senate, mistrusting me and hearing how I sought to unite the old citizens with the new, hath wrought much trouble, but to no effect. I hope the soldiers of Capua shall follow our faction, for Sylla, hearing of these hurly-burlies, is hasting homeward, very fortunate in his wars against Mithridates, and it is to be feared that some of his friends here have certified him of my proceedings, and purpose to restore you. Cethegus and Lectorius, I hear, are with you. Censorius and Albinovanus will shortly visit you. Therefore haste and seek out your father, who is now, as I hear, about Minturnum. Levy what power you can with all expedition, and stay not. Rome, the calends of December, your unfeigned friend, Cinna, consul.
Yea, fortune, shall young Marius climb aloft? Then woe to my repining foes in Rome. And if I live, sweet queen of change, thy shrines shall shine with beauty midst the Capitol. Lectorius, tell me what were best be done.
To sea, my lord. Seek your warlike sire. Send back this peasant with your full pretense, and think already that our pains have ended, since Cinna, with his followers, is your friend.
Yea, Romans, we will furrow through the foam of swelling floods, and to the sacred twins make sacrifice to shield our ships from storms. Follow me, lords. Come, gentle messenger, thou shalt have gold and glory for thy pains.
And they exit. Gold and glory for that possibly comic character's pains. It does feel like a brief comedy interlude there of just, better make sure I'm giving it to the right person. Oh, it was such a journey. Hang on. Messages in the top of my javelin. There we go. There we are. That's the real thing.
Yeah.
It's a nice bit of business. It just breaks everything up a bit, and then we get this really quite difficult speech. Well done, Alexandra, trying to dance through the list of names that will go in one ear and out the other. We will meet some of these again later, but I don't know if we haven't. Do we actually encounter? Yes, we do. We do actually meet Albinovanus later on. So that's let's see where that brings us. That's the end of Act 2 as it's split up. Yeah, we've gone from obviously the demonstration of power one side from Sylla to the responses. So one of the losers is hiding out somewhere, the other one is receiving news and is being a little more active, a little more proactive in response. Thoughts just about this scene for the next few minutes, and then we'll go into final thoughts from the room. Lois.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the time sequence. I mean, they assume that Marius is in that place that we just saw him in, but on the other hand, they were planning to murder him there. But clearly, a lot of time must have elapsed because Sylla has been conquering in Mithridates in the meantime and is on his way back. So there could be a race against time, to find Marius with this news before somebody gives him the chop. But I don't know quite how we're meant to see this.
It still feels like it's, in terms of stage time, it's got momentum, and that these things feel like they're happening fairly quickly, even if yes, in practice, stuff is happening over a much more extended period. I don't know how the room feels about that. Other thoughts?
I was thinking. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I was just thinking that as well, that after the end of the first act, there must be quite a lot of time that's passed. But I think these scenes are approximately simultaneous, these last two scenes.
Yeah, I think in that sense, if we were trying to make the acts mean something, then we'd actually extend Act 1 into the first scene of what's Act 2 and say that's a unit of action. That is the rise of Sylla and demonstration of his power. And then here we're into the losers, as it were. Yes, that certainly makes sense in terms of how we think about it. And in fact, as we go into Act 3 tomorrow, we may find that in fact there's more business connecting with what we've just done now before additional units of action go forward. Valentina.
Not that geography usually means much in these plays, but are they in Capua? Because Capua is probably further off from Rome than Minturna is.
There has been some discussion of geography in the chat. I don't know if anyone's come up with a scheme of this.
There's somewhere where the best way to get to Minturna is by boat, right?
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Yeah, so they're on that coast. Yeah. No, but there's the potential for it to be like later on because it takes longer to get there.
Yeah. Other thoughts, Lois?
I was struck by that line about, yes, he must be one of his slaves because he always brands them like that. I mean, just such a horrible image. I don't know whether this was meant to be sort of shocking to Elizabethans. On the other hand, they did brand people as well. Ben Jonson apparently had a mark on his thumb, I think, from when he was in jail. So I just don't know quite, if the effect would be quite as strong as it is on someone hearing it now.
Well, it depends what Cinna's particular branding is. It does seem that that character is supposed to be moderately comic, not necessarily full-on clown, ridiculous, over the top, but there does seem to be a certainly slightly different energy to them. So maybe it's not too big or grotesque, but who knows? A lot of questions about how to portray that. Other thoughts from the room before I go into final thoughts? No. Okay, so we've got 2 acts in. We're a good third of the way into the text. We've already had some discussion about actually how to stage it and how stage worthy it is. We're now sort of into the plot, as it were. We're out of those very sort of engaging opening moments. We're getting to the implications of what these characters are like. We're getting to know them, getting to know all about them, getting to not like them very much in certain cases. Getting away from that sort of debatey official procedureness of that opening sequence that we were quite engaged with, to a much more untidy, a much darker world, and it's interesting to see that happening so fast in stage time. So much happens, and it does feel like the text has perhaps slowed down a bit, but I don't think in real terms it would. It may just be the way we're reading it, because they are slightly shorter scenes, that it feels slightly slower, but there's still a lot of urgency to what people are doing. When you're on the run, you're on the run, and there's still huge amounts of potential there. I'm going to go around the room unless anyone wants to volunteer and leap in first. I'm going to go to Helen first. Thoughts, final questions, hopes and dreams for the rest of the week.
I'm quite interested in how to portray Sylla, because he keeps on using the words like jolly and frolic while perpetrating various horrors and ordering others. It seems to me that he could be quite, not exactly grotesque, but he could be one of those tyrants who are enjoying their own cruelty. They're very much aware of the impact that they have on the people around them. I think there's quite a lot to Sylla there.
Wow, you're muted.
Have I been muted for long?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have I just been standing here talking? I was doing an extensive monologue, and nobody said anything.
No.
For ages
Oh,
until
yes,
Elizabeth.
we did.
Okay, I'll say all that again then. I've no idea what I was saying. Yeah, in terms of the performability of that character, considering this is coming from the same company as Tamburlaine, this is a part that does feel like it's got Alain written all over it. There's all sorts of interesting possibilities on that. Aliki, I did see a hand, so I'll go to you next. Final thoughts.
So the hand was to respond to Helen, who I think is exactly right, and everything that I know about the historical Sylla suggests that he was that kind of guy anyway. So hey, great, lots of fun to play. But I love this. I think it's great, and the trick will be unpicking all of the tensions of it, because it's so. Alan, I think, said in the chat, realpolitik, and that's bang. It's this is House of Cards. I love it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is that it's one thing to have systems of government, and then you've got someone who just goes, no, this is what power looks like. It's a head in a bag, and everybody's reactions to that, the way people try and we're probably going to get more of that as people try to their responses to that, and hopefully the play's going to deal more with that, and we're going to get more of that further down the line. I mean, it's very charged. It's feeling very charged at the moment as a play. Helen wanted to.
Hasn't been any mention of a bag, has there?
No, well, that's just the way. As the professor owner of a wonderful head in a bag, that's how we refer to heads at the moment.
Okay.
I did my best with the props I got immediately to hand.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't cast it right. I know exactly what part you're getting next time, Helen, because you've got the head in a bag.
Not anymore. I haven't. It's gone. It didn't occur to me to keep
always
it.
hold on to your props. Never get rid of a good prop.
Nice Savoy cabbage, and you could cook it afterwards.
Anyway, Valentina, I think I said. Valentina, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, enjoying is probably the wrong word. I like it. But yeah, what is like jumping up to me is like how universal it is. That story has been told so many times, and even in this, in the Roman Empire, they seem to have a knack to have Sylla characters. I'm thinking of like Nero or Caligula, or it's just yeah. And I like it especially, I think, because you don't need to, from an audience point of view, you don't need to know the story. They're telling you everything. So far, we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yes, the storytelling is really strong so far. It has actually managed to explain quite a lot without that much exposition as well. You know, it has put in exposition, but it has managed to do it within a context where that's reasonable. Not like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. Moments, which is the curse of network television. Elizabeth, final thoughts from you?
I really agree with Valentina and Helen. I think that the play is very compelling. I think I like the intrigue, and Sylla really comes out as this main character in the first two acts. That's kind of moves to the forefront. We don't see that much from Marius. I'm hoping that we might see a bit more of Marius. Marius is still alive, isn't he?
Yes.
It's Granius that's been murdered, so Marius is still alive, still kicking. So I was hoping we'd see a bit more from Marius and a bit more from the other characters, because at the moment it's the Sylla show, and Sylla is very compelling, but the other characters have a lot to say too. So I want to see a bit more from them.
Yes, I was saying that this play has a huge cast of characters, but in fact the principals are actually relatively small number of principal characters, and then you've got sort of ancillary characters to them. So actually, again, in terms of clarity of understanding, it's not like we have this wave of Roman names flying at us too often, which is actually really helpful in terms of storytelling. Alan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it as a piece. I must admit, it's a bit of Roman history I knew zip about and was quite confused, because a number of the names, as we mentioned, are names that recur, you know, in later periods with the takeover by Julius Caesar and then the disputes after his period in office. But yes, it seems to work at a fair speed, and I think there are some issues about the unities of time, and making clear that what we've tentatively renamed Act 2, Scene 1 and Act 2, Scene 2, with the two which are happening out with Rome, it's clear to the audience where they are actually happening. Muted again, Robert.
I'm muted again. Yeah, it's a question of really those events are happening elsewhere. I don't know whether hard and fast geography matters, so long as that they are, another place. But yeah, certainly the production needs to know what's going on, and I think a production can also have a lot of fun doing the research in the background into this. And I mean, I think it's also it's very useful to understanding later Roman history as to why people are really worried about the rise of tyrants, because you have examples of proto tyrants in early history. There are difficult people about. Liza, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, that in some ways, I wonder if, especially given that first scene, this isn't a play about the evils of democracy, given that this is a play performed in Elizabeth's England. We take for granted that a democracy is better than a monarchy, but you couldn't say that, even if you thought it, if you were doing a play in Elizabethan England, and that this and the slide from having lost an election to tyranny is something that we see in other Roman plays as well, that the Roman Republic is a place of noble ideals, but it can be but it's fragile and can be taken advantage of by those seeking power.
Yes, that voting on things is as divisive sometimes as it is uniting, and that there are dangers of when people demonstrate what whose side they're on. That's a really interesting thought. I like that, because that's nicely reversing thinking about things like that very much. Stephen, final thoughts?
In that scene with Marius, a quotation popped into my head, which was, it's nothing personal, it's strictly business. And I kind of think I was a little bit misled by this kind of the idea of Rome stuff that we started with. I think this is a gangster movie, basically. Scorsese would know exactly what to do with this. And one of the things that I think doesn't come across so well on a first reading is the distinction between the capo and the civilians, and who's in which camp. There's this kind of generals are kind of family bosses, as it were, and that once I'd kind of sussed that made it a lot more interesting. So it just goes to show, and I think that might be a way to go, or something to bear in mind in thinking about a production. It is really to do with something that isn't about grand historical stages, despite alarums and people sort of rushing around. It's actually kind of family stuff, and it fits that kind of that gangster paradigm for me.
Well, it's a good point. Someone mentioned I, Claudius earlier. When they first started producing the BBC version, they were actually floundering a bit for the first week or so. They weren't quite sure how to play it, and then they figured out that yes, they were basically mafia bosses, and from that point onwards, that was a key for some of the actors as to how to perform the scenes. So I think it's a road that's been travelled before. That's the danger of knowing I, Claudius quite well, is it does distort history in quite interesting ways, and it really does slightly mess with your mind when you actually try to apply it with things that actually happened the way they happened. Alexandra, final thoughts, please.
Yes, I think this play is structurally brilliant. I really love the way in which it is constructed, the way in which we get given information. It never feels like an info dump, and also the way in which characters are, the characters that we are privy to more details of, the way in which we receive those details. I think there's quite a clear delineation between the old lean to inactivity and the young are active. That we're sort of being given through all those references to white hairs and to age in general. I think Anthony calls himself old, And he seems to be the only one in Sulla's camp who's going, can we take it slower? Can we maybe consider not killing so many people? There's something, I think there's an aspect to the names and the number of characters that might be difficult to for us to wrap our heads around. But in the same way as with, for instance, a game at chess, the labels that are, the speech labels that are given to the characters can be very confusing. But when you're watching them on stage, clothed and physicalized in all those various ways, you don't need to remember which one is named what. You need to remember faces, and then you associate that. So I think there's something very important to the presentation of this that is to do with the modern audience not knowing the history and all of that, that needs to be considered, and that kind of requires bigger production. Not necessarily like financially enormous, but it would be useful to differ in the sets so that you can tell we're in different places. It would be useful for people to, for so many characters to all be dressed in clearly distinguishable ways rather than Roman uniform. So yes, I think that might be a challenge for a modern production. But I would love to see one. I would love it to happen. It's great.
Lois, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd love it to happen tomorrow. I think it would be a huge hit, and everybody would be thinking we made it up. I mean, yeah, I think it is quite political. I mean, even the title, "The Wounds of Civil War," I mean, it's in a sense the same sort of thing as Gorboduc, and quite a lot of the plays of this period. It's awful. The country shouldn't tear itself apart, and it should go and destroy other countries instead. And this whole question of whether what is a decent form of government. I mean, at the moment, with people discussing whether democracy is still viable, I don't know that there is much democracy on show. Actually, I mean, even in the first scene, it's a small group of senators that are making the decisions, and they're clearly being manipulated anyway, at least if I understand the opening correctly. No, I think it's probably also Lodge, having seen Tamburlaine, producing a slightly more organized version in a way. I mean, the thing about Tamburlaine is that he keeps coming on stage and saying, I'm going to conquer whoever. And then somebody else comes on and says, no, this time we're going to defeat Tamburlaine. And they don't. I mean, Tamburlaine just keeps winning. Whereas here we've got fortune, it's a pendulum swing. At least I think that's what it's going to be. It looks as if it's heading that way. So in some ways it's more interesting.
That's the question. Chicken and egg, which came first, or did they come at the same time?
Yeah.
And that's because it does. The two sit very much on top of each other. They utilize at some point similar properties. So maybe everyone was given a certain remit. Go out and write something a bit like this. We're doing this season, rather than necessarily the automatic thing of responding to another play. In order, some kind of order, which we can't be certain of. Helen?
They had an enormously current example of civil war in that France had been in civil war for decades. I mean, I don't know what the latest count is, but there were at least 5, there may have been 7 civil wars just in Elizabeth's reign. And the impact of civil war in loss of revenue, loss of life, devastation of property, ill feeling among neighbours, all the rest of it could be very clearly seen just across the channel.
Yes, it has been mentioned by people, I think, a few times, but I think I just want to end my note. I think I've done everyone now. Anyone hasn't, wave. Is that politics of age? We've talked about the white hair and the age, and it has been mentioned a few times. But yeah, just to emphasise that again is also just it's not just a signifier of making it clear that maybe one side looks slightly different from the other side, and that maybe there's that, but there might be some give to play there about a generation gap. element to this, and that might be another route in. The nice thing about this text is that it's rich enough to suggest several different directions which could all exist within a production, even if they're not necessarily at the absolute forefront. The production does need to focus on certain things, but that doesn't mean the production itself can't have rehearsed and discussed and played with all of the angles, and it's good to bring them out here. Lois.
Yeah, your comment on age reminded me. I was going to comment on Anthony. I don't really understand why Sylla hasn't killed him by now, but I think this must be one of these roles for an elderly actor or somebody who was really good at being a sort of semi-chorus figure and coming out with the right sort of views from time to time, just to remind everybody that such things do exist. But he's a curious character in this thing.
Well, it might be that Sylla is obeying those rules of a good tyrant, or shall we say, an effective tyrant. Is that you only kill those you need to kill. You don't just kill everybody. And if he can cow someone like Anthony, then his job's done. He's on the list. There's someone following him home every night, waiting outside the door in case. But yeah, I don't see a pressing need to kill him yet. He said, taking that a little too internally. Okay. Not staking this part out at all. Not staking that part out. Any final thoughts from the room? No, I'm seeing nothing. Right, that's the first two acts of The Wounds of Civil War by Thomas Lodge. We will be returning to Act 3 into Act 4 next, tomorrow. It's not the next session. There's another session between this and the next session. And so we're going to dig deeper, and we're going to find more characters. And ladies and gentlemen, a woman will appear.
Oh, I was wondering. Yes.
And actually, hold on to your hats, people. There's going to be two in the same scene. I mean, yes, it's been very blokey, and nobody's mentioned it so far. So yes, we will have some women tomorrow.
Not only a woman, but also a funny person.
We in all in one or one at a time.
We will see. Tune in tomorrow.
Okay. I thought the funny person wasn't coming till Wednesday, but we shall see. People have been reading ahead. Okay. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful people in the room, and fare thee well and goodbye.
Bye.